So when Oliver asked me to do this week, and to do it predominantly like about social, the first thing I thought was there's absolutely no way that I can tell you guys how to start on social as a startup in 20 minutes. So what I'm kind of going to do is a bit of everything. I started to think about my clients and the pain points that they came to me with, or like kind of lessons learned that I wish I did at the beginning and went through with them at the beginning, that would have made my job so much easier and even their business obviously more successful. So I'm kind of touching on everything individually. But if there's anything anyone wants to, like any questions or anything afterwards about any specific topic, just let me know and I can run through it. But a bit about me. So founder and social media manager at Cloud Creative. I set the company up about 2 years ago, but I've been doing this for about 4 years. I predominantly work with like small to medium businesses, working on elevating their online presence and engagement through social media and marketing strategies, but working kind of on the basis of their entire brand. The reason why I chose small to medium was because I can get my hands in with every single part of their business. So with marketing, as she's just gone through, it's a bit of everything. When it's social media, it's everything. You're looking at that brand, you're looking at content creation, you're looking at social media, you're looking at email marketing, you're looking at page, you're looking at Google. So when you work with small to medium businesses, you can go through every single area with them and really kind of help make a massive difference. Just a little bit of info about me, if you guys care. But I originally took 2 gap years from university. So I knew I wanted to go to university. I just didn't know 100% what I wanted to do. And I heard so many scary stories of people going and spending 4 years doing a degree or sometimes longer and then not actually going on with their degree, like doing something in a completely different industry. And I am just way too impatient for that. So I did work experience. I went to Australia, travelled, I saved money, did all that, and I did as much work experience in as many industries as I could. I called up every single agency in Manchester. I just did so much that I could just to make sure that I knew before even applying to uni that whatever I was going to do, I was going to do it wholeheartedly. From here, I went to study at the University of Manchester. So I did fashion marketing. On my first week of uni, that's when I got my first marketing job, because I'd already had 2 years of experience of like doing the internships and work experience and all that. I went straight into a part-time marketing position. And then from here, I worked with Drapers, I worked with the Fashion Network in Manchester, I worked with Pretty Little Thing. So it just kind of went, I worked probably about 6 days a week throughout my university degree, which looking back was quite difficult, but I'd still kind of recommend if you can do it, do it. I worked with as many brands as I could do, got as much experience and got my name out there. And that's how I got into Pretty Little Thing as well at the beginning. They saw my name pop up so much in different industries that they reached out to me and offered me the position whilst I was at uni. So it's just literally about getting yourself out there for that. And then whilst I was at Pretty Little Thing, which I thought was my dream job, I realised I didn't want to work in fast fashion. I didn't like the ethos, everything about it, the work ethic, everything kind of thing. So I worked there for about 9 months, and then I'd already had kind of a roster of like freelance clients, and I thought, why not just leave and just try it? And then I just never looked back. Went there, had a few freelance clients at that moment, and then just kept building it up as I was going. And I've not looked back. And then, as I said, I wanted to kind of run through just some key tips that I have from working with the kind of brands that I've worked with. So just for an example, the kind of brands I work with are like premium, luxury, fashion, jewellery, a bit of everything. I've got gaming clients from LA, jewellery, law, accountancy, a bit of everything basically. As long as you have the right strategies in place, you can use them basically in any industry. But these are kind of the key learnings that I think would be great to go through. The get your brand right first. This one, it sounds so basic, and I think she's kind of spoke about this in the last presentation. But one of the big things that I noticed was brands would come to me and want to get started on social or want to get started with paid ads or email marketing, but their brand wasn't complete. So They either didn't even have like a branding deck. They had like one logo. They weren't sure on fonts, colors. They didn't really know who their customer is. They just knew it was a guy and he was 25, or like a girl and she was 45 and she had a kid, but they didn't really know who their customer was. And at the beginning, I'd work with these clients anyway, because I didn't really know myself that we needed to get those kind of things right first. But now I won't work with a brand unless they've gone through this first, either with me or, with someone else, like a branding expert, whoever it is. Getting this right first is the first step into actually creating your like social media strategy and creating your brand. You can't get out there if you haven't uncovered like who you are, like looking at your brand and who your brand actually is, your personality, all of it, who your actual customer is, and then why you. So what's your like unique power position? There's so many companies out there. I think it's something like 6 million businesses were in the UK in 2020. It's a lot of businesses. And if you're going to make another business in 2022, how are you different? Like, how are you actually different? You can say what your USPs are, but there's probably still like a million other companies out there who has your USP. Like, what actually completely makes you unique? Like, I know a lot of brands that I'm working with that are new startups now. They're obviously getting into the NFT space. So like premium luxury brands, they're using, there's one brand I'm working with, and they're premium luxury menswear, sustainable, and they're incorporating art completely into every aspect of the brand, and they're using NFTs through that. So it's just, that's completely unique at the moment. In like 2 years it won't be, because everyone's going to be doing it as well. But right now that's really unique, and they're getting a lot of hype around it. So it's just about finding what your like unique power position is before you even think about doing anything else. Super important. And then this is one, once you kind of got started on social as it is, don't get swept up in KPIs and objectives. When I first started, again, I'd have brands say that they want to get to like 10,000 followers within the next 5 months, or, they want like 1 million shares in 2022 or whatever. And again, I'd work so hard to try and do this, thinking that's what we should be working towards, but really that's not what you should be working towards. There's so many companies that, again, approach me that might have 150k followers or whatever, but they don't actually get orders. Like, they might get a couple of months, but they're not like established themselves when it comes to like orders and stuff. So the one piece of advice when you are starting on social, don't look at your KPIs, don't look at your objectives, don't keep an eye on who's following you and who's not, who's unfollowing you. I have certain customers that they will message me when they've noticed like 10 people unfollow them that week. Like, don't pay attention to it, because the people who are there, pay attention to them, engage with them, and focus on building a community. Start small and just build it up. Don't work on it. And then once you're like true to yourself and your brand, and you've worked on everything from who your customer is to who your brand is, those followers will come. Like, they will come and they'll be engaged. So it's super important. Again, this is a mistake that I made myself, because I didn't even think about it really at the beginning. And it's every single customer, the first thing they say to me, every single brand, is that they want to grow on social. Like, they want their followers up to like 1 million, or they want the tick or whatever. And now I'm just no, like literally no, like don't even look at that. Not yet. Number 3, don't skimp on social media strategy. This is something that, again, as a small business, it can be quite hard to kind of, depending on obviously funds, it can be quite hard to work out where you should put your money. And if I'm being completely honest, do it on your, once you've done your branding and you know who your brand is and your customer is, work on your social media strategy. You either pay someone to do it and then do the strategy, and then you implement it if you haven't got the funds to have someone on like an ongoing retainer. Don't try and do social without a social media strategy. It's like when brands approach me and they say they just want to get going, they don't really want a social media strategy. They kind of know what they want to do, but they want me just to do it. It's like, you wouldn't create a business without an actual plan in place. Why would you try and grow on social, or like make this a platform where you're going to sell without putting a strategy in place? So it's massively invest in this. Not too expensive at the beginning. You can get social media strategies from about 350. Anything lower than that, I don't really. You can try, it's always worth trying, but invest in a social media strategy from an expert. It'll save you a lot of time as well. One of the things I notice with a lot of clients on small businesses is they try and do everything, which as a small business, if you've not got the funds again, you kind of have to do a lot at the beginning. But it's like, if you don't want to be a social media manager, you want to be a business owner, and you're investing, whether it's in courses or your time, which is money, like money is time, and you don't actually want to go in that path, then you're kind of wasting your time. Whereas you could just pay someone else to do it and they could get it done in like quarter of the time. And then you could be investing your time then into other aspects of your business that you're actually passionate about as well. So if you're not really passionate about the social side, you're passionate about the innovation or the technology or whatever it is, that's where you should be putting your money and your time. And also don't rely on it to grow your business solely. Again, I have a lot of clients who at the beginning, they think that they're going to like make millions or whatever through social only, but that's not how it works. It works in unison, like every single part of your strategy works together. So when I do like case studies and I show like potential clients my case studies, they'll be like, okay, that's amazing. Yeah, I want to get to that. But you can't get to the case studies I show. I only show ones that I've been doing for years. And these are businesses that have worked on like their Google Analytics, their SEO, their website, their content creation, their email marketing, their paid social, influencers, like everything. They do it in a full circle. You can't just expect to do like one part of the pie and then, have the entire thing work. It doesn't work like that. It's working on it all in unison, doing it bit by bit. And again, even with getting started on social, depending on budgets, don't jump into paid. I know if you approach like an agency or anything, they might tell you jump straight into paid. Don't do it. Focus on organic, build that community, find out who your audience is, build your community organically as much as you can. It's a lot harder these days. Build it as much as you can organically first. And then once you've built it up, alongside focus on content creation, because again, there's no point doing paid ads if you haven't got good content, if you haven't invested in photo shoots, whether it's just, again, as a startup, just hiring a photographer and getting some friends, always invest in a photographer. Focusing on that side first and then moving on to paid. Yeah, again, don't pay attention to vanity metrics. They look good on social, but again, having 100k followers on social, if you receive 0 orders monthly, there's no point. You want to focus on building your brand and community before focusing on any of that. And then just social media branding and guidelines, again, I see people who want to invest loads of money into social media, but they don't put it into their website, and it all needs to be in unison. So it's if you go on someone's social media and their social media is amazing, they've got great reels, they've got great photography, everything looks good, the content, everything speaks out to you, but then you go onto their website and it's crappy, or it doesn't actually convey what you want to know, or it doesn't give you that extra information. So for example, if it's a sustainable brand and you're screaming about sustainability on your socials, but then you go on your website and these customers can't actually find anything that tells you how you're sustainable. You can say you're sustainable, but they need to know how. And for example, in the sustainable sphere, I have worked in it, and the customers are brutal. They're probably the most brutal type of customer you can get when it comes to sustainability, because they're more than likely very clued up on what they're doing and why they want to shop sustainably. So if you were, for example, to say that you are a sustainable brand, you need to know it to the T. You need to know exactly how you are sustainable at every single area of your brand and why that is. And then it's investing in content creation. This probably should have been number one, because again, for now at this stage, I would never work with a brand if they don't, for one, either invest in photography and photo shoots and content creation, whether it's graphics or anything like that, with me or with someone else. They don't need to do it through me, but if they haven't got the right content, there's no point doing anything. None of this is valid if you haven't got good content. You could have a social media strategy in place, and you could have a great website and the best ideas in the world, but if your customers can't see that through imagery like this, it's not going to work. It is the key thing. So even for me, for example, when I work with smaller clients, I tend to do photo shoots and content creation first before we ever touch their social media, because there is no point. You are kind of throwing money at it if you haven't got the right content. invest in good content creation, you don't need to use a model, but use, friends, family, anyone you can kind of pull in, and then invest in a right photographer. And I think at this age as well, you guys probably know a lot of like budding photographers. Like there's a way of working it out and making it a lot cheaper as well. But this is the one thing you need to invest in before looking at anything else. If you haven't got this right, you're just not going to reach that ideal target market. And it's example, as she was just saying, if you're targeting, say, like a 45-year-old Karen, the photo shoots need to align with her. If you're targeting like a 16, 17-year-old young gal, the photography, the content, the models, everything needs to align with them. So that Miss Selfridge isn't going to shop here. Like this customer is 35 plus, Ibiza loving chick, that's it, wavy hair, loves to be in Ibiza, all that kind of stuff. That's who kind of shops with this customer. And she, without a doubt, this client, one of the most successful clients I have, but because she knows her customer to the T, and it's because she is her customer. Like she knows herself completely and she's completely open with it. And because she's obviously targeting herself, she's been incredibly successful because she's targeting herself. She knows what she likes and she puts that out to it. And even things that she would want to appear that she likes. So there's some things that, people guess to make you seem a little cooler, that kind of thing. She knows what she would want to look cooler, even though she won't actually wear it, if that makes sense. And she will put that in her photo shoots, and that attracts her audience, and it works every single time in every single area. This was a quote from Sarah Simmons. I don't know if you guys have heard of her. She's amazing. She used to be the head of buy-in at Harvey Nichols and River Island. But I met her about 2 weeks ago up in Paris, and she said this little quote, and I just think if you take anything from today, like this is it. The world doesn't want more, it wants your meaning, innovation and impact delivered instantly. It's what I was saying about like unique power position and your USP. You need to be unique. You need to have something that is completely different. It doesn't need to be completely different, but it needs to make you stand out from, every single person else in that room. And she really, really focuses on this, that it's not about making loads of different brands. It's about finding that brand that is actually missing. And even if it's just like a certain aspect of it and focusing on that. And she's amazing. So how can you reach your customers through social? Again, I've just touched on some of the different ways that I work with clients. But any questions to go in depth or anything like that afterwards, just give us a shout and we can run through it. Influencer marketing. So obviously you guys have heard of this. Everyone uses it. It does better in certain countries than it does in others. For example, Irish clients, I noticed that it does amazingly over there, and that's just they've got a lot more trust in their influencers than they do in the UK. So depending on obviously where you're targeting, you need to be thinking about how you're going to use influencer marketing. So influencer marketing in the UK, a lot of brands and a lot of clients, especially smaller, use it for content creation. So obviously getting your brand out there and like a bit of social proof as well, but they don't necessarily focus on it for sales. When it's smaller businesses, they focus on it for content creation. So if you can't afford like a £3,000 shoot or a £4,000 shoot, you can afford to gift an influencer. So that might cost you obviously the cost of the product and delivery. So for clients that I have that can't afford big shoots, I get them to do this and then invest in just a photographer and a friend, and it works out really, really well, especially at the beginning. But again, to use influencer marketing, look at where your actual audience is. So if it's America, it's going to be different. If it's Europe, it's going to be different. I did not realise the massive difference in influencers in Ireland and England. It's like a 30-minute plane ride. You would not believe the difference in reach that the influencers in Ireland get in comparison to the UK. It was like phenomenal. For one client I had, they sold out from using one influencer, and I think she had like 100k followers, so she wasn't even like a massive influencer. She was quite small in the grand scheme, but they completely sold out of that product that they were pushing just from using an Irish one. So it's focusing on that. Paid social media, again, don't focus on this until you've got your organic right. So you've got your brand, your customers and your organic, and then look to do paid social media. It can be really, really expensive, really, really expensive if you don't do it right. The minimum I would say even to spend on social, like paid social, will be absolute bare barrel, like tiny amount would be like £300. Absolute minimum. I wouldn't spend any more than that. That's the minimum, and even that, depending on your industry, that's, you know, it's going to be a struggle basically. So wait until you can kind of build it up, and then look to do paid advertising as like to add to everything else. So when your website is really good and your SEO is really good, people will come on. So they'll go on Google, they'll search for you, on your products or whatever on Google, they'll go onto your website, and then you can use paid advertising to remarket to them. So that's a really effective way, and that's probably the cheapest way you can do it, is through remarketing. But please, as a small business, don't do this until you've done everything else. I've seen so many businesses waste thousands and thousands of pounds because they haven't got everything else right. When you're doing organic, it's a way of testing what works as well, so seeing what people actually engage with. So depending obviously on the platform you're doing it, whether it's like Pinterest or like Instagram or Facebook, it's just a way of seeing what organically works right. Do that for like 4 months or whatever, depending obviously on budgets, then look to do paid. So with small clients I don't start them on paid until at least month 3, at least, depending on their budgets, just because we want to be testing. So then when we go into the paid, we know exactly what we're doing. We know exactly what content people like organically, which is going to work on paid as well. And we know what to say. We've tested it. We know who our customer is, and it works really well. Email marketing. I feel like some people like kind of forget about this a little bit because we don't use emails as much. But email marketing is a really effective way to, as a small business, to grow. You use it in every area of your brand as well. So when someone signs up on your website or on your email list, that is your data. Like, you have that data, as long as they've obviously said that you have permission to like email them or whatever, that you have that. And it's a lot harder for someone to unsubscribe than it is to click unfollow. So when you have this list and you build this list, you can use it in so many ways, even through your paid marketing. So creating lookalikes based off your email marketing list is phenomenal. Like, it works so much better than creating normal lookalikes. So it's something that at the beginning of any brand, just set up your pop-up, set up everything, get it ready. So even though you might not look to send any emails for like 4 or 5 months, 6 months, whatever it is, depending again on budgets, you have at least an email list then when you go to do it. Again, I've had brands who might have been like established for a year or so, and they hadn't ever thought about email marketing. They just had their little box at the bottom of their website. So they'd had some people sign up, but they'd not been pushing it. So when they came to like the 12-month mark and they wanted to do email marketing, they didn't have a list to begin with. So they had to start them from there. Whereas if they had pop-ups and just these extra little things set up that don't really cost any money, once they're set up, they would have had like an entire email list to be targeting from 12 months. Or again, when you get ready to do your paid at month 4 or 6, you have an actual list to start jumping onto. And then your website. So again, this is just something that invest in if you can. I know a lot of people like to build their own and stuff, and if you have the skills to do it, but just spend the right time on it. Put the time in, put the effort in, work on the content creation, like the imagery, graphics, everything. Get it right so that it is in unison with your socials. Everything, you want it to flow. So when people go on your socials, they know that's your brand just by looking on your website as well. Yeah, and then I've just put some QR codes if any of you guys wanted any like help with anything. So just some advice. It doesn't have to be anything, just any advice. I put a free social media audit, but if you want any advice or any questions or anything about this industry, just pop me a message. That's completely fine. And if you have any questions after as well. I know I kind of skimmed over everything. I just wanted to give you guys a bit of an overview. There's so much in this when it comes to social that it's really hard to figure out where to get started. But those are just some key things I noticed that either I made the mistake of not thinking to look for with my clients, or that I know my clients wasted a lot of money previously on other people. And it can add up. Every part of it can get really expensive. That's everything, guys. Thank you.
So what goes into a branding deck? It's like my first time hearing about it.
Oh my God, there's so much. Okay. If you pop me an email, I'll give you an entire list of it. It's quite long, I'm not going to lie. It takes a lot of time. So it's getting all those parts right first, and then looking at it. It does take a lot of time if you do it yourself. Put the time in, right, get it right, have some, friends, family, or your ideal target market. Say if you're like targeting people, whoever you're targeting, just go out and ask them, or pop someone a message and just ask them to look at it, and they will look at it. I'll look at it if you want. You know what I mean? Do that, get that right first, and then look at everything else. But if you pop me an email, I'll send you like an entire list of everything that will go into it. No problems.
Put it on the document with all the reasons.
Oh, that's what I have.
Everybody except you can get
Oh.
Yeah, my parents have run a small business for a bit now, and I don't think their marketing and their branding is anywhere near what it should be. But they're not tech savvy at all. So like, how would you approach them or approach somebody that's not tech savvy to make them either try and get into the space, or would you prefer that somebody else did it for them?
It just depends on budget. So the way I would work with like a small business is either work to them. So like a lot of businesses that I work with, again, tend to be older. I think there was some statistic and it was like the average business owner is about 50 years old or something like that. So that's like my parents as well. So they're not tech savvy in the slightest. Like my dad got Facebook about 2 years ago. Like it's not in the slightest. I'd see what their goals are and see how you can reach it with, if they're going to do it themselves, see how you can make them comfortable in reaching it. So that could be baby steps, and it just depends on who they're targeting. So getting them used to it bit by bit. With someone like that, it might be a case where you do like a social strategy and they go away and try and implement it themselves. Or most clients who are like that, they want to do the social strategy, work with you on it because it's their business, their baby in a way. Work with them in it and then have you completely do it and not really have much involvement in that side of it.
So be like the tech guy, essentially.
Yeah. And then just report to them at the end of the month. That's normally how I work with clients like that, just because they don't know how it works, but they just want to know that it's working. So, like end of month like reports and stuff like that. So they know it's working and just working towards that. And a lot of my clients like that as well. We do a lot of like one-on-ones to make sure they understand it. Because again, with like my age, I didn't think that certain words that I will say, they won't have a clue what it even means. Even someone in their like 30s, they won't have a clue what I'm talking about. And that was a learning for myself. But once I'd like realised that, working with them to make sure that they're comfortable and getting to that level.
So with like a certain audience, say my target audience is like 21 to 29, and I've got like all of these social media online platforms that I want to use, how do I actually say I want this to be my audience? Like how do I, because I only know how to upload, how do I sort of target these people through the social media thing? That's
everything that I've just said. So as in like, that's like your content. So say like what content you use, and whether it's like, depend on what your business is. Say if it's like graphics that you guys use, or if it's videos, or if it's imagery, it's making sure it's geared to them. So for example, if you're like a suiting company, it's not going to be content like that jewellery one I showed before, like beachy on the snorkeling like that. You're going to make sure that it's whatever content you're creating has that person in mind. How would they react to it? So say like if you are the target customer, look at this content. So for example, when you're starting out, go on Pinterest and make a board. That's normally a good way to do it. Go on Pinterest, make a board and pull out everything that would resonate with you from like your competitors. Pull that out and then see what you could do from that. So start from that. So it's content, and then it's looking at like captions and stuff as well. So like how would you speak to a 20 to 29-year-old within that like target market? How would you actually speak to them? You're not going to speak to them like, what you at, you know what I mean? It's not going to be like kiddie speak. It's not going to be old. You want to make sure that you're speaking to them in the right way. And then it's finding out what platforms they are as well. Not even just that, it's also making sure who your target customer is, because 21 to 29, and did you say male? Both.
Yeah.
Oh, so even both, that's huge still. Like you put that even into like Facebook ads, for example, and this is where I see people waste so much money. They'd put 21 to 29-year-old male and female, and they'd waste thousands of pounds because that isn't actually just your customer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's every aspect of it. What are they interested in? And then you go to where they're interested in. You find them that way.
So is that like following other pages similar? Cause
That's a little bit of it, but it's finding. So for example, I have a client, she runs like paint events. Like, so people bring like, they'll bring their mothers and stuff, so it's like 18 plus. But the way that we worked out, and it's not something that I'd recommend to most companies ever, but we target people through like Facebook groups as well. And she sells out without a doubt every single event. We had an event last night, so I'm a little bit, but it was like 80 people. Like, she sells out completely in every single event, but she knows that her customers are 25 plus, and that they look to communities. They're very community focused. They're very like cultured, and they like to be involved. So finding them on like Facebook groups works amazingly. Like, and it's not something that I've seen in any other client before. It's so unique to her. So it's just finding out who your customer is. So I write down everything, like do like a little skeleton or whatever. Write out every single thing about this person. Do they like to party? Do they like books? Do they like to read? Do they like concert? Like every single, like, find out exactly who they are, and from there you'll find out where they are.
yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's one of those things that will take you a while to do, but as an example for that jewellery brand that I showed before, she knew, like before she was with me, she knew exactly who her customer was. She just didn't know social. So she's 55, I think, but she knew exactly who her customer was because it's who she's always been. She's always been this like Ibiza chick who like lives 6 months in Bali, 6 months in Ibiza. That's who she is. She knows who she is and who she was previously. So she knows exactly who to target. She just didn't know how to do it. But once she got that, she just had that part right, and she still did amazing before I even came in, just because she knew exactly who it was. So get that right first, and then look to everything else.
I was just wondering if you have any more advice for the brands that are focused on sustainability, because I know you said customers are obviously quite critical of them, so do you think it's a thing of being ultra transparent on your website and socials? Or?
See, I've worked with like kind of from a different, both angles. So like one client I work with, they were radically transparent. So like everything, you'd go on the website and it would say exactly how much it cost, like exactly how much the product cost, how much the manual labour cost, every single aspect of it cost. But then, just for example, with that company, she was so transparent on everything. Like, she spent so much money and time figuring out every single aspect of the brand. And then there was one part of it that we had not thought about, and oh my God, people came for us and we did not realise. But basically, if you guys are not interested in sustainability, sorry to bore, but basically, in where she was getting her cotton from in America, the actual like fertilizer, so the fertilizer was completely fine, but the company who owned the fertilizer, like over the company who owned it, so like the big guys all the way behind, that we wouldn't have even thought to look at. We looked at the people who owned it, not the people who owned the owned companies, and all the way back. They were known for like deforestation and killing bees and everything like that, and that was one aspect of it that it was so far gone. Someone had spent a lot of time to figure out that was where the cotton would come from, and every other aspect of it was sustainable. But we had so much backlash that she completely stopped manufacturing. She stopped it completely because it didn't align with her ethos. When she found out who owned it, everything, it didn't align with her ethos, and everything that she put into the brand was based on that. So she honestly like lost upwards of £40,000. She just like stopped because she couldn't move forward with the brand. So it just depends on how. So since that, I've been very clear on that. Don't say you're transparent. Don't say you're sustainable until you are. I find it works better to say you're working towards it. You're working towards it because there's no way you can be 110% sustainable. That's something that pops up at all times. Focus on the areas that you can be, and then just build upon that, and just make it very clear on your website. So say, like, for example, if you're putting on your socials that you're sustainable, you're ethical, like whatever you do, like you support artisans or whatever, make sure it's clear on your website what you're also working towards, and don't state that you're 100% sustainable, because that's where the backlash comes from. So just make it clear that you're working towards it, and why you're working towards it, and what aspect of it. So I know I'm working with this sustainable brand at the moment, and they're not calling themselves sustainable at all. So they're like premium menswear, but they're not going to be calling themselves sustainable. Within the website, you'll be able to see how sustainable they are. So every aspect of the brand that we can is going to be sustainable, but they don't want to push that. They want that to be like an addition. It's a really, really cool menswear brand. So they don't want to like stop these men who wouldn't look for sustainable brands. They'd look for cool brands. They don't want to stop them from like shopping with them as well. So it's just working out your target market as well. But one piece of advice, just don't say you're 100% until you are. But even then, as I said, you're not really. Like, really? Any other questions?
Do you have certain brands in mind where you think they have very good social media strategy? It could be smaller startups or bigger companies where you think they know how to target their target customers and the way they just run their advertisements?
Oh my God, so many. So many do it so well. But I would say ASOS, you know, for social media, they do it so well. And like even their stories, everything like that. If anyone asks like how to do stories, because I think people really struggle with figuring out how to do social media stories, like on Instagram and Facebook and all that, ASOS do it so well. They're so on the ball with it. Like they do it so well. But then it's looking at like brands that do marketing so well. Like the best in the world would be Nike. Like they do it better than anyone in the entire world, like the best. But it's looking at, there's so many. I'm trying to when your mind just goes blank. There's so many, but I'd say ASOS for social media, definitely. Yeah, I love them.
Are there any more tech-specific tools that you'd recommend to post on Instagram stories and get all of the branding right for posting content?
What do you mean? Sorry, like text.
So like actual tools or websites or anything that you would recommend creating content on to then be put on social media?
If you're not tech savvy, do you mean?
Just anything. Really.
Canva's really, really good.
Okay.
I'd say Canva is a really, really good starting point. So I was on Canva I was speaking about this a couple of weeks ago. I was on Canva about 5 years ago, when it was still obviously established, but it was basic. And then I only went back to, and I've been using Photoshop for the past like 4 years. And I went on to Canva about a year ago, and it is like a godsend. It is a godsend for it. So I'd say that for small businesses, but then as you grow, nothing beats a graphic designer. Honestly, nothing beats a graphic designer. Like, I thought my graphics were amazing until I worked for graphic designers completely. Like even just briefing them, they know it. They know it's a skill. It's like photographers, you know, you think you take a good picture, but then you look at a photographer and yours is nothing in comparison, you know that kind of angle. But getting started, I would say Canva is a really, really good tool. It's so easy to use. And I don't know if it's recent, but I just noticed it, but they do, it's a whole app now, a whole app on your actual computer as well. So obviously they had it on the phone, but it's on the computer as well. Like they're completely trying to outshine Photoshop. So definitely start with that.
Yeah, thanks.
No problem.
This is a reflect my question, but what was it about the fast fashion industry that made you sort of want to leave?
Well, basically, it just didn't align. So I went to uni, okay, and I had in my diary, first page, I'll work at Pretty Little Thing. It'd been on my list. I was like, my goals, it was on my goals. I was like, New Year's resolutions, I'm going to get a job at Pretty Little Thing. And it had been on my goals for a good, 3 years before and the reason I even got that was because I kept putting my face out there that the HR guys just knew me. They knew me and they approached me. And the way it works is just completely different inside. So I'm not the most academic, I won't lie, but I still value academic, and I value skill, I value expertise, and the way I noticed it worked. And it wasn't until I was in there that I realized it was the same thing with other fast fashion brands. They don't focus on it. They seem to just get young people in who are creative, and then there's just a big turnover. I didn't like that. It's not to say that you have to go to uni to do any of these kind of jobs, because you don't, but I'm pretty sure I was the only person who'd even been to university on the social team at that point. and it just didn't align the way, like, yeah, it just didn't align with me. And then for that aspect, for like career wise, and then when I saw how fast fashion worked, like you obviously hear about it and you know about like how, the waste and all that, but when I saw the actual waste, and when I saw how like clothes are like treated in comparison, I was like, this is just not for me in the slightest. And even like I think my mentality is very different to the kind of way it works. Not that I say it's a bad company, because it's not. People in there that they love their jobs, and it is a good place to work. It didn't align with me. Didn't align with me when it came to like the fast fashion, the waste, all of it. That was when I really started to like learn about like sustainability. So like all the brands that I tend to work with, either they are sustainable or they're at least trying to make a difference. Like they're not just like focused on money. Like none. I've never worked with a client that's just doing it for money. Every single client I've worked with, they're so passionate about their brand. And that's one thing, like if you're starting a business and you think about starting a business, don't look at the money, think about passion. Like, are you actually passionate about it? For example, one of the clients I have, she's so amazing, but she's so passionate about our business. It's incredible to be around, but she has copycats left, right and centre. All the time we see them pop up, people steal her idea. They'll come to like her events, they'll take notes, and then they'll go and they'll do it like constantly. And as a brand, if you're thinking about making a brand and it's going to have like this USP or unique power position, and then someone copies you, like what have you got? Whereas someone copies her and she's like, it's fine, I'm thinking of something else. She's 6 months ahead by the time they've actually caught up. So that, if you haven't got a passion for it, honestly, don't do it. It's so much effort if you don't have a passion for it. Like you won't stay in it for the long run. Like that's why, again, something I had to like explain to her that yes, there's all these copycats that are all about, and they are fully stealing her idea completely, just putting another name on it. But she's passionate about it, so she will stay, and she will be here in 10 years' time. I see it completely. These other businesses just saw it as like, she's able to make money from this, I'm going to try and do it as well. And that's not going to work. So focus on the passion first, and then the money will come too.
I have a question. So what do you think about Gymshark? I mean, they were the ones which were able to use social media influencers to market their clothes and stuff. And just an overall opinion on Gymshark and their growth in the last, 5-6 years.
I love Gymshark. I don't know why I didn't say Gymshark before. I love Gymshark. I think they did something that no one else could do when it came to influencers. I think every single part of it, and they're so intertwined. See all these other brands that have tried to do it, like tried to have like athletes and stuff like that. They were so unique. They are definitely up there. Don't know why I didn't think of them, but yeah, they are definitely up there. Like probably better than ASOS, and working their way towards the likes of Nike. They do it better than anyone else has when it comes to like influencers. I remember they started, and the way they did it, and which is something I try and steal a little bit with the brands I work with, is they work with influencers. They worked with influencers who were tiny. So these influencers, like the Whitney Simmons, like she was tiny. Like she had a small following when she started with them. When she kind of got in with them, those like the Nikki Black Leather as well. Like they were small influencers, not too small, but like they grew with each other, and that's something that no one else has been able to do. They completely grew and they stayed together as well, which is again not much that other people have been able to do. It's what I've tried to do with influencer marketing. So when I do influencer marketing, I primarily focus on like micro influencers and like nano influencers, so like under 100k, and the loyalty and like even just the friendships. Like I still speak to so many influencers that I've worked with, and when you put them with the brand that they believe in, it is honestly magic. They will push it, and their followers will believe it as well. And that's what Gymshark did that no one else has been able to do, honestly, on their level. That's why I say, like, when it came to like Irish influencers, they work so well because people still trust them. Gymshark influencers still trust them, and that's not something that really happens in the UK. It's so uncommon, so they've smashed it. Good example. Any other questions? You can always just pop me a message, as I said, on that. Pop me a message if you have any questions or anything specific to like your brand or what you're thinking about. All free, don't worry, just chats.
maybe just a last question. So obviously, I suppose like you are very keen always when like people approach you to be a client. But realistically, what would you recommend? What sort of maybe revenues should be a brand be like making to approach a specialist like yourself?
Honestly, I work with a lot of startups, so they don't really need to be like a lot of revenue or anything like that. Some brands come to me and they're doing like 5K a month. You know, that's like a nice size for a beginning, but that's like a solopreneur. Like that's like, you know what I mean? You can't really like have a team with that. But that's like brands who are obviously trying to build. But then I have some brands that are making like £27 a month or like £60 a month. They're at the really, really beginning, and those are the kind of ones that didn't focus on other areas and tried to invest in like even PR. Like you see these people who try and get like these spreads in like Vogue, and it's so expensive to get your product in Vogue. But realistically, does that do anything? Not really. Like it's nice maybe in the future to be able to say you're featured in Vogue, but could you have spent like, I don't know, if it's like 10 grand, could you have spent that on like so much more, like every other aspect of your brand and then focused on that? So it honestly just depends. I work with mostly small to medium just because I looked at working with bigger companies and I don't like, and I think it's the corporate world for me, but I like working with owners. I love working with owners. So all my clients, I work directly with the owners. I don't tend to work with like, they're like, you know, CEOs or whatever. I work with the owners directly, and I don't just help them with their social media. It's their marketing, it's their branding, it's making sure that they're in line, and then it's directing them to where they need to go as well. So sometimes I've had clients where I'm like, don't pay me, like go to someone else to do this. I can't do this for you, you do this, and then come back to me in like 4 months and we'll work on this together. It just depends on them, and I didn't like that I couldn't really do that in bigger companies, whereas working with these smaller ones, and even about the passion in these small to medium businesses, they're so passionate that it's like inspiring to be able to work with them. And that's why I genuinely love what I do, but it's because I get to work with people who also love what they do. I can't stand Debbie Downers. That's what happens in the corporate world, where like people just don't like their jobs. I see it so often, and like I've even tried working in like offices in town for my own business, and I just like left one, which ends at the end of this month, because I just can't be around people who aren't like inspired by what they do every day. And that's why I like working with smaller businesses, because they tend to be, and they get big and they kind of forget about it.
So the rule is don't get big, guys.
Yeah, solopreneurs work, right? Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No worries. If you guys have any questions, thank you.